Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Backbone Podcast, where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and only getting sicker, and a world that is today sadder than ever. And if anybody thinks that Satan isn't running amok, take a look at the image next to you. The awful, awful tragedy that happened in Central Texas over this 4th of July weekend is unimaginable, especially if you're a parent. When you look at the pictures of these angels next to you, sharing my screen here, I mean, what else do you have to live for once something like this happens? More than 100 people have now been confirmed dead as the point of this podcast, at the time of this podcast, with at least 84 in Kirk County alone. Kirk County, if you don't know where that is, it's right in the bouts of San Antonio area. And this all happened following the flash floods in Central Texas. Now, search efforts are continuing even today. This is now the 4th day for the search efforts, and there are dozens of people that are still missing. Dozens. These girls were in a Christian camp. It was called Camp Mystic. It's a girls' summer camp that is in the county. It has been confirmed, sadly, that at least 27 of the girls and staff are among the dead. 10 children and 1 counselor are still missing. Can you imagine what their parents are going through right now? You know, the 27 girls and staff that have been found, it's a horror. Trust me. And I'm not saying it's easier for those parents, but at least they've been found. Now you can set them to rest. But these other parents here, their children are somewhere buried under mud, floating down these rivers. We don't know. Can you imagine the torture it must be? How can you eat or sleep or do anything? How can you function in life knowing that your baby is at the bottom of a river somewhere? Now, Mother Nature is not helping the cause here, because more rain and thunderstorms are expected in that particular region, creating further chance for further flash floods. And we are now starting to hear that questions about whether accurate flood warnings were provided in time. There's always going to be finger pointing at this. And the demonic Democrats, of course, politicians are all opportunists when it comes to shit like this. If this were the Democrat president, Republicans would be screaming at him. Now that Trump is in there, Democrats are screaming, and the Democrats are saying this is all about climate change, and Trump engaging in climate change and championed for it. So this flash flood, of course, and the bodies are all on Donald Trump's. All the blood is on his hands, and that is ridiculous. That is opportunistic bullshit. And any politician, I don't care if you're a Democrat, if you're a liberal, progressive, conservative, libertarian, whatever. If you vote for a politician that tries to take advantage of this, you need to look in the mirror. You need to look in the mirror and say, what the hell? What am I looking at? Because this is what these people are like. They don't give a shit about these little girls or these families whose lives are destroyed. They care about getting brownie points for votes. This is what American politics is about. Some parts of Central Texas, including Kirk County, experienced several months of several months worth of rain in a few hours on Friday. The pictures that you will see on social media, the water entered some of these cabins almost reaching the ceiling. That is insane. There's nothing you can do about that. It just came right in and blasted these poor people into oblivion. Now, Trump is planning on visiting this region later in the week, and we'll see where he goes from there. But this is all just a horror show. And what pissed me off about this even more, I was saddened by this, but what disappointed me more about this is Democrats are now saying that government cuts contributed to this tragedy. Tell me how. With spending $50 billion on more welfare and SNAP benefits have stopped the rain from falling? A lot of these politicians are hitting Trump for staff cuts that stop the National Weather Service from adequately predicting the floods and to raise the alarms. This is the country we live in. This is the world we live in now. And we sit here day after day listening to these people drivel on about how their party's best and they're looking out for us and yada, yada, yada. And the minute a tragedy like this happens, they go political. You have families sifting through waterlogged debris, searching and looking and stepping inside empty cabins where their children were at one point, looking for any evidence of them. These girls were ripped from their beds by these flash floods. And these floods totally took these cabins and homes off their foundations. And rescuers there, God bless them, are maneuvering through challenging terrain and high waters that have snakes in them and water moccasins. I mean, these guys are risking their lives. And they continue to this desperate search for these missing girls and counselor. Now, Greg Abbott, for the first time, Greg Abbott, who is the governor of Texas, addressed the state. He said that there were 41 confirmed to be unaccounted for across the state, and more were missing. That number, of course, has risen. But in concentrating on Kerr County, where this Mystic camp was, there are other youth groups, Christian youth groups, that shared that area. Searchers found bodies of 68 people, including 28 children. 27 children, I beg your pardon. Sheriff Larry Latha, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, pledged to keep the search until, quote, every body is found. 10 other deaths were reported in Travis, Burton, Kendall, Tom Green, and Williamson counties, and the death toll is certainly to rise over the next few days, said Colonel Freeman Martin of the Texas Department of Public Safety. So and as we said, there's more heavy rain to come, more thunderstorms to come, and the flooding will probably continue. Abbott has warned people, Governor Abbott has warned people that additional rounds of heavy rains are coming, and they'll be lasting until tomorrow. Today is Monday. Tomorrow will be Tuesday, and could produce life-threatening floods, especially in places that are already saturated. He said in a news conference in Austin, emergency alerts are active, and Kerr County has been warned of high confidence of river flooding. The loudspeaker near Camp Mystic urged people to leave. Minutes later, however, authorities on the scene were said that there would be no risk. You know what? I'm getting out of there anyway. I remember September 11th when people were told to get back in the buildings. Don't worry, it was an accident. You know what? Fuck that. I'll take my chances. I'll get written up by my boss. Sunday morning, families were allowed to look around the camp. One girl walked out of the building carrying a large bell. A man said his daughter was rescued from a cabin on the highest point of the camp. She walked the riverbank, looking in clumps of trees and under big rocks. A woman and a teenage girl were wearing rubber waders. Briefly went inside one of the cabins, which stood next to a pile of soaked mattresses and trunks of clothes. At one point, the pair doubled over, sobbing before they embraced. It's an absolute horror show that these people are witnessing here. It's like Armageddon. Families saw the devastation for the first time. Nearby crews operating heavy equipment pulled tree trunks and tangled branches from the water as they searched the river for these girls. With each passing body, the outlook of finding more survivors became more and more bleak. Now they have volunteers there. They have families there of these missing people who drove to the disaster zone. They were searching the riverbank day and night. And the question will always be, did authorities do enough? Were the weather warnings issued on time or in a timely manner? Could they have predicted this flooding sooner? I don't know how you could. I mean, you could say, hey, listen, there's some major storms coming and maybe it's not a good idea to be here, but I mean, who could have predicted this? I mean, there are cars, trucks overturned. It looks like it really looks like Armageddon hit. Now Trump is likely to visit on Friday. When asked how come Friday, he said, and I quote, "I would have done it today, but we'd just be in their way," meaning the rescuers or the rescue services, before boarding Air Force One uh, to head to New Jersey. It's a horrible thing that took place. Absolutely horrible. Quoted by Donald Trump. Now, the destructive, fast-moving waters rose 26 feet on the river in only 45 minutes. There's no way anybody could have predicted that. And the floods, all that water washed away homes and vehicles, and the danger was not over as the flash flooding remained in effect, and more rain fell in central Texas on Sunday. So this has been a disaster. While they're trying to rescue these people, while they're trying to find these people, the rain has not stopped, and the water is just rising and rising. I mean, 26 fucking feet. That's crazy. I can't even imagine what that's like. These people are using helicopters, boats, drones. They're looking for these victims. They're trying to rescue people. They're rescuing people that are stranded in trees. The roads are all washed out. And as a miracle, and an absolute miracle, they have rescued 850 people in the last 36 hours, in the first 36 hours. That's the miracle. Because as much of a tragedy as losing 27 beautiful young girls, we could have lost almost 1,000 people by now. We've lost 100 altogether so far. In Rome, Pope Leo the 14th offered special prayers for those touched by the disaster. History's first American pope spoke in English at the end of his Sunday blessing, saying, and I quote, "I would like to express sincere condolences to all the families who have lost loved ones, and particularly their daughters who were in a summer camp in the disaster caused by flooding of the Guadalupe River in Texas. We pray for them." So this is worldwide news. And the pictures it looks like something out of a movie. The hills alongside the Guadalupe River, and I've driven past San Antonio, and I've heard from people who are from Texas that flooding is sort of a normal thing there. Not, of course, to this extent, but there is known to be flooding from this Guadalupe River, and there's another river around there that I forget. But this is something that people in Central Texas deal with when these heavy rains come, because it's very, very dry there, and it's extreme heat there, especially during the summertime. So when they get these rains, these rivers swell. But the Guadalupe River, and if you've ever seen pictures of it, it's beautiful around there. It's covered in centrally in these youth camps and campgrounds where families have come to swim and enjoy the outdoors for years, for generations. The area is especially popular during the 4th of July. And that's why there were so many people there. That's why it's more difficult to find out who is missing, because everybody's scattered all over the place. And the weather isn't helping. Now we're going to hear, of course, as the days go by, of the survivors. We're going to hear their stories about how they were swept away and how they're holding on to trees and the rampaging floodwaters. We're going to hear about people hiding in attics and inside homes, and people who were praying to God even if they didn't believe in God. You're going to believe in him then. You're going to pray to something, trust me. These people were there to enjoy their holiday weekend, and it turned into a horror show. There's a story of two school age girls from Dallas who are currently missing from their cabins. There's a cabin, the entire cabin was swept away. Their parents were sleeping in a different cabin. Their parents are safe. But trust me, they're not safe. They're guilt-ridden and they're horrified right now. But the girls and the grandparents are currently unaccounted for because they were spending the weekend at this river. Now, locals know this is called the Hill Country. It's called Flash Flood Alley. So they've known that this is happening. This is not a conspiracy. This is what's going on. But the flooding in the middle of the night caught many of these campers and even the residents of this area by surprise. So even the experienced people who've lived there for probably years on end, they were shocked by this. Listen, it's Mother Nature. You cannot predict this shit. And again, you're going to hear mainstream media and Democrat politicians say, well, there were warnings and Trump's cuts were part of this. The National Weather Service on Thursday did advise of potential flooding, and they sent out a series of flood warnings in the early hours of Friday before issuing a flash flood emergency. These are rare alert notifying of these things. They're rare. Should these people have left? Probably. But the weather from what everybody was saying, the weather on Friday was beautiful. The Friday day was gorgeous. The rain just started in the middle of the night and it poured like mad. And no one could have expected such an intense downpour. Nobody. Whether you like Trump or not, you can't blame this on this guy. I mean, that's insane. And of course, FEMA will now get involved, and they're the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They're going to get involved to find out if the Weather Service was on the ball or not, if Texas responded or prepared well or not. A reporter asked Trump before he boarded Air Force One if he was planning on rehiring any of the federal meteorologists who were fired this year as part of a widespread government spending reductions. And Trump's response, and I quote, "I would think not. This was a thing that happened in seconds. Nobody expected it. Nobody saw it. Very talented people there, and they didn't see it," unquote, by the president. And he's right. This is not political. This tragedy is just an act of nature. There's just no way to explain it. The only thing we can do is pray for these families, pray that these girls all get found and that they can be put to rest in a dignified way, in an honorable way. Because nobody deserves this. These parents who are looking for these little girls, you know, how they'll move on is beyond me. But we pray that they do. All right, my friends. Sorry we had to report this one, but thank you for watching. I'm not going to even ask you to do what I usually ask you to do, but I'm going to ask you to be careful out there. And if you have children, hug them a little tighter, because you never know. You just don't know. Satan is busy. Be a man. Have a backbone. Because masculinity and common sense are worth standing up for. And we'll see you later, God willing.